Good morning, friends. You're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
Today we're out in the greenhouse. It's really hot. 10 o'clock this morning, it's already 101 degrees. It was only supposed to get to 101 about 3 o'clock this afternoon, so it's going to be a hot one. We have a lot of things going on. Irene's going to be doing some trimming of cucumbers. We're going to work together on a few tomatoes. I'm going to deal with some of the large vines that have kind of gone unchecked. So come along and see what we're doing.
I'm going to put a roller on that other growth point that is already large enough that I'm not going to take it off. There we go. I now have a roller up on the ceiling. I need to move it over, unfortunately. So I want to direct this one more vertically here. And I'm going to encourage this plant here to go sideways more. So a little bit more string here. It doesn't go down far enough to reach the baby plants. There we go. Okay. Now, before I get that underway, I am going to clip this on. I've been out of clips for quite a while, unfortunately, so I have not been able to use my physical clips. I've been relying on the tendrils. Now, this particular type of cucumber, which is Tasty Jade by Johnny Select Seeds, has very strong tendrils, so I haven't been too worried about it. The heavier the plants get, and especially once you have fruit, this fruit is massive. It gets to be easily 10, 12, 14, 16 inches long. So yeah, I did not want it breaking the vines. Okay, so what I have now is all the spare leaves on this branch were taken off. This side shoot here I decided was big enough that I would leave it in place. It's been attached to a separate roller, and I'm going to prune and control it as it comes up. This one here has had all the junk cleared off of it pretty much. That's got a new growth point there. We'll take that off too. I'm trying to be careful. This one here, I guess, also has a new growth point. We'll take that off. See, it depends on the angle you're standing at sometimes as to whether you can see it, which is one of the reasons I like sort of rotating around my plants when I'm doing this sort of stuff. These I'm not going to play with yet because the fruit is a little in there and I just don't want to mess it up. This is where I put the new clip on it to help support. As you see, I had a clip here, but this whole section here has been self-supporting with tendrils. I just didn't want to risk that, especially once we get some monster fruit on it. As you can see, there is some monster fruit in here. Some of it, unfortunately, is laying down, which I don't like, but we'll be fixing as much of that as possible. And in the future, I don't want any of that, so back to work. Here's the intrepid Doogie dog. He has been running around chasing lizards like crazy this morning. So I've got that one plant done as much as I can. Now ideally, I would actually direct it more towards the wall, and I'm debating that. I'm actually thinking about whether I could use a string. And I've never done that, but then I don't have that much practice with this anyway. And I've been debating whether I could put a string from here to pull this out like this. And I'm thinking I might actually try that, because ideally I'd be growing sort of sideways over here, and I just don't have a way to do that that makes any sense right now. So I think we're going to make the stems. Because why not? Worst thing I can decide, it was a really bad idea and I'll never do it again. It will limit my ability to walk around this side of the plant, but I'm the one who does most of this, so I'm not too worried about it. And worst case, I decided it's a really bad idea and I cut it off and I wasted a string. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull this guy sideways like that. Slip knot so I can take that out if I decide it was a bad idea. Okay, get this junk out of the way. On to the next plant. Now what I like about that is it opens up this whole area here and it lets me sort of sort stuff out better. If I was doing a normal bed environment, this would be sort of a drop and lean approach. I just don't have a normal bed. I'm working out of a big wicking pot here. Let's see what we have going on here. Oof, well, first of all, underneath all of this, we have a we have a cabbage. Oh, and it's got a really nice big worm on it. Okay, so let's get the worm out of there. And, yep, there's the worm. And say goodbye, folks, because worms get squashed. Anyway, so I suppose I should put up a violence warning on that one. We have zero tolerance for worms in here. We do not rehome them. We do not. Actually, would I ever rehome a worm? Yeah, I could imagine rehoming something like a butterfly worm that I knew about for sure. But these are just moth worms. And not in my greenhouse. I don't bug them if they're just out in the wild. But if they're in my garden, it's not allowed. And he has done a lot of damage. I knew there was another one over here and I just could not find a guy. All right, let's look back at the cucumbers and see what we have here. Here's the stem. Okay, I have had a little bit of problems on this cucumber with it dropping some fruit. So there's a growth point here that I'm going to cut off. Because I'm not sure what's going on. Now the fruit up here looks fine so far. These top ones look great. I'm thinking it wasn't getting quite enough water. I'm going to remove all the growth points going down here because I don't want this to become more of a jungle than it already is. If I start to have too much trouble with the main stem here, I will allow one of these growth points to come in and I will replace the original main stem. What I'm doing is I'm being pretty harsh about removing a bunch of these bottom leaves and all the growth points because I want this to be bare down here. I want to know if there's any bugs. This growth point here has already grown out and already has a 2-inch cucumber on it. And this is one of the concerns I had when I was not able to tie this guy up for a while. This plant is almost completely supported by one clip and tendrils. Not what I would recommend. It's iffy. On the other hand, I've had clips break too. That's one of the reasons I needed a new batch, was that these guys are honest and say that these clips will probably last a year. Some places will say that they'll last for years and years, and generally they don't, especially if you're in a lower latitude, which means, okay, think of a ladder when you think of latitude. A ladder has rungs, and if you laid a ladder north to south on a country's map, no matter what country it is, that determines your latitude. And I know that's kind of a corny way of thinking of it, but that means how much sun you get at different times of year and how much UV you get. Now, in addition to being a lower latitude, because we are in Arizona, we are also high altitude, which makes the UV even worse. which means it's going to eat plastic. Even UV resistant plastic is going to be eaten here faster than it is in other areas. And what I'm doing here is I just put a couple of clips on here to provide more support. So if a tendril were to break or die for some reason, or a bug were to chew a tendril through, all of a sudden I don't have a plant that's fallen and broken the stem. Now what I have here is now a bare stem down here. I have a growth point that is already out of control. So I'm going to have to string that one up too. I'm going to cut off this little dead thing. I have a couple of tendrils down here that have died off because they were completely in the shade and they were not happy. So we're going to clear all of that off because it's just dead plant materials are just a place for bugs and fungus and stuff like that to be, and we don't want any of that stuff. So I knew that there had to be another silly old cabbage. I don't know what kind of inchworm he was. Doesn't make any difference. You can actually tell the difference between different types of inchworms. They have different patterns to the colors on them, and they grow different sizes and stuff like that. I'm just not all that interested about this one in particular, besides he's smushed now. These clips seems to work a little bit better than the last batch I had. I'm good with that. Maybe they're new and improved. And we're looking much better now. And I need to put a roller on that other growth point. Some places you'll have cables, and we actually do have a cable down by the tomatoes, but we're aiming for a quick fix here. So we're not going to try and run any cables. Long term, we're going to be completely redesigning this thing for next year because we've learned so much this year already. And we just didn't have any data before. Is the best way to put it. So I'm going to put this up here. There's the loop stuck over the top of the. There we go. There we go. Clean stem, multiple hooks, a new leader on new roller hook on a growth point, same thing on here. I'm just going to continue this process and we're going to get this whole thing all fixed up.